Squid Game Season 2 has its fair share of head-scratching slip-ups, from rule-breaking masks to scenes that defy logic. Let's uncover the biggest mistakes that made it past the editors, but not past us, unexpected guest. In the intense Episode 7 of Squid Game Season 2, Friend or Foe, Gi-hun and the others fought back against the guards. They took their guns, started a shootout, and turned the game into total chaos. While bodies dropped one after another, something unusual appeared on screen in the middle of all that action. During this intense scene, a camera person could be seen with a camera on his shoulder. It might have gone unnoticed, but his regular clothes gave him away. He wasn't wearing a green tracksuit like the players, or a pink uniform like the guards. This means he didn't belong in the scene, but for a brief moment, he was part of it. Sometimes, streaming platforms fix them later by erasing crew members from the shot. But for now, this one remains. Maybe Netflix will remove it in the future, or maybe it will stay as a small reminder of how tricky filming these action-packed moments can be. A meal that won't stay still. Another major editing mistake appeared in Episode 2 when Detective Jun-ho sat down for dinner with his mother. During this serious moment, he was revealing details about his brother In-ho and their family's struggles. But while the dialogue flowed smoothly, the food on the table didn't. 1 second, Jun-ho had noodles on his chopsticks. The next, they were gone, sitting in a completely different bowl. The inconsistency didn't stop there. His bowl of rice kept changing too. One moment it was full, and the next it was almost empty. It's a small detail, but once you see it, it's hard to ignore. But with food jumping around so obviously, did the editing team miss it, or did they hope no one would notice? A changing island? In Squid Game Season 1, right after the first game, a top-down view of the island was shown, giving us a clear look at its shape and layout. While the games were filmed in a real coastal area, the CGI made it look like an isolated island. Fast forward to Season 2, and the same aerial view appears after the first game. But if you compare the two shots, something doesn't match up. The size, layout, and even the coastline of the island look completely different. The game area doesn't line up with what was shown before, making it seem like either the island changed or the production team didn't stick to the original design. CGI can be tricky, but for a show known for its attention to detail, this kind of inconsistency is hard to ignore. Maybe the team simply went for a new look, or maybe they hoped no one would notice. The phone number fiasco. Before Squid Game Season 2 even premiered, Netflix had to fix a major mistake from the first season. In the very first episode of Season 1, Gi-hun receives a mysterious business card with a phone number. While the number was meant to add suspense to the story, it turned out to be a real, active number when combined with South Korea's mobile prefix 010. As the show became a global sensation, a South Korean resident received thousands of calls and messages from curious fans. This time around, any phone numbers shown on the screen were carefully placed to avoid real-life mix-ups. The timeline mix-up. Season 1 of Squid Game was released in 2021, but the series events took place in 2020. This was made clear in several places, such as the confidential files that Detective Jun-ho accessed and the player details shown during the 5th game, which both confirmed that the games took place in 2020. After Gi-hun left the game, the season ended by showing that 1 year had passed. Season 2 picked up from there, stating that another 2 years had gone by. That means the story should have been set in 2023, but here's where the mistake happens. In Gi-hun's room, the calendar on the wall clearly shows the year 2024. That's a full year ahead of where the timeline should be. If the writers wanted to keep things consistent, they just needed to say 3 years had passed instead of 2. Did they overlook these details, or just hoped no one would do the math? Gi-hun's missed opportunity. After spending 2 years chasing a single clue about the games, Gi-hun finally learned that Jun-ho had crucial information about the VIPs and the masterminds behind it all. But strangely, despite being so determined moments earlier, he never asked Jun-ho a single question. For someone so desperate to uncover the truth, his silence made no sense. Gi-hun's impossible nightmare. In Squid Game Season 1, Gi-hun never saw the frontman, not his face, not even his mask. He was never present when the frontman appeared in the game area. In Season 2, when Jun-ho mentions that the frontman wears a black mask, Gi-hun reacts with surprise, which makes sense. But here's the mistake. Before this conversation, there's a nightmare sequence where Gi-hun clearly sees the frontman. That shouldn't be possible. Since Gi-hun never saw him in Season 1, how could he recognize him in his dreams? A deadly illusion. Before Gi-hun returned to the island, Squid Game Season 2 opened with a brutal game. The salesman tied up 2 loan sharks and forced them to play Russian roulette. At first, he loaded only 1 bullet into the revolver, but after a few rounds with no one dying, he added 4 more, making the odds of survival much slimmer. At first glance, this seems like a deadly twist, but something doesn't add up. The first bullet he loaded wasn't real. It was a dummy round. That meant neither man was ever in danger during the first few rounds, and when he later added more bullets, 3 of them were also dummies, leaving only 1 real bullet. This means the chance of dying was still 1/6, not 5/6, as it appeared. The production team may have used dummy bullets for safety. However, in the scene, 1 bullet looked noticeably different from the others, suggesting the salesman did this on purpose. So, was this a calculated psychological trick to terrify his victims, or did the show accidentally misrepresent the real stakes of the game? A villain's fate or a production slip? In Squid Game Season 2's premiere, the salesman finally took a more direct role in the bloodshed. One survived and revealed everything about Gi-hun's plans. This led to a tense showdown between Gi-hun and the salesman, where the two engaged in the same high-stakes game. In the end, the salesman took his own life, but something was quite off. His death was supposed to be final, yet some viewers noticed inconsistencies in how the scene played out. Certain angles showed him in slightly different positions, and the timing of his gunshot felt slightly off compared to the surrounding action. Salesman's portrayal made the character one of the most compelling villains in the series, but with these small inconsistencies, did the show intend for his death to be this way? Or was there a slight mistake in how it was edited? Inconsistent elimination. While Gi-hun knew about the red light, green light game, the new players had no idea. And even though the rules stayed the same, something seemed off. Those sensors were supposed to be extremely sensitive, as one woman got shot just because her hands were shaking too much. But somehow, Park Yong-sik reacted strongly when the shooting started, yet nothing happened to him. Other players also seemed to escape elimination despite obvious movement. For example, player 222 jerked noticeably at one point. She was behind other contestants, but her arm moved far enough that the doll should have detected it. The game was supposed to be unforgiving, punishing even the slightest mistake. Maybe the doll's eyes have blind spots this time. The mask rule that disappeared. In Squid Game Season 1, soldiers had a strict rule. If their faces were revealed, they were executed. That's why they always wore masks, even in their work environment. But in Season 2, this rule seemed to vanish. Soldiers casually walked past each other without masks, even in locker rooms. In one scene, a soldier even looked shocked after seeing the front man's unmasked face, something that should have been impossible under the original rules. Was this a deliberate change, or did the show completely forget its own rules? The pacing problem. One of the things that made Squid Game Season 1 so engaging was how well paced the games were. Each one kept the stakes high and never overstayed its welcome. But in Season 2, that balance felt off. The build-up dragged on for too long by stretching out the setup and delaying the actual action. By the time the games finally started, they didn't have the same punch. Some felt rushed, while others lacked the creativity that made the first season's challenges so intense. And with fewer games overall, the sense of danger wasn't as strong. Maybe the show aimed for a deeper story this time, but in doing so, did it lose what made the first season so thrilling? And there you have it, some of the strangest slip-ups hiding in Squid Game Season 2. Whether they were small oversights or major inconsistencies, they definitely didn't go unnoticed. Did you spot any others? Drop them in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.